Hello and welcome to the Engerati studio. I'm Rose Bundock and I'm joined now by Merce Griera, Head of Research and Innovation at DG Connect. Thank you for joining us. You're at the European Commission, where it's all happening from a regulatory perspective. And I know our audience will be very keen to hear your insights. We were just talking on air and you mentioned that if utilities think they know the full picture of regulation, then they might be missing a piece from the data perspective, which is what you cover. Can you fill us in on the work you're doing at the moment?
Yes, I think you are fully right on that. I know that the utilities have many experts that are following in detail the works that are done in the European Commission, but mainly they are following what's going on DG Energy. And now that the utilities become more and more digitalized and they are using more and more data for offering new services, for managing better the network, they must have an eye on what's going on the legislative side, but on DG Connect, that is where I'm working with. And what we do there is we work on data and data management. So as concrete initiatives, because we can talk about data in general, but as concrete initiative, we have three pieces of legislation that I think are important for the utilities. The first one is the General Data Protection Directive. This one probably many of your audience knows very well because it was adopted already in 2016, but what is important to say is that it will enter into force in May next year. So there is just a few months to work on the implementation, on the necessary changes that the utilities have to do in order to adapt the General Data Protection. Then the second piece of work that we are doing and may be very relevant for the utilities is what we call the free flow of data. And that is for not personal data, but for non-personal data. That refers to all the data taken by the different sensors that the utilities are more and more having on their own networks. And what this piece of legislation says is that no one of these informations can be restricted to a particular country. So Europe as a single market, the data that comes from the utilities can be stored, can be processed on whatever country there is a service provider that offers a best opportunity for the utility. We believe that with that we will facilitate the work of utilities that are operating on different countries, so they can have a single data storage on whatever country fits better to them in order to manage the full operation. We will also manage to have a reduction on the cost of hosting services in the cloud, because services can go to a country where it's less expensive. Like that will reduce costs for utilities in order to set up all these data management procedures. This piece of legislation was adopted by the Commission on the 13th of September, so it's very new, and it will go now to debate in Council and Parliament, and we think that could be really binding by next year. And finally, my third element is what we are doing now with the revision of the public sector information. And here the big debate is whether to consider utilities as part of what is the public sector. We know that utilities are operating under commercial criteria. They are companies. We cannot say that they are a department. They are not like a government or a local government. But from the other side, utilities have a public interest. Is in the agenda of all states in the world to reduce CO2, to improve energy efficiency, and all that will be done only if the utilities have the proper data to manage their system. So there is a public interest, there is a political interest behind the utilities work. So why not to consider the utilities part of this public sector information? That's a debate. The Commission has not a position yet on that, but to inform our decision, we have launched a public consultation that is now open in the web and that will close by the end of the year. So all the utilities are more and more than welcome to participate in this consultation and to tell us their views on the possibility of being considered as a public sector entity.
Just to go back to the free flow of data, I mean, presumably that would enable the energy union in Europe, so you could actually, be doing transactions, understand where customers are. What about the implementation of that? What kind of structure would be needed? Would it be national data hubs, like we're seeing in the Nordics? What's the Commission recommending?
The Commission thinks that not one model fits everybody. The reality of our 28 member countries is so different. Ones are big, the others are small. Ones have very few DSOs, others have hundreds. So the reality is so different that it will be silly to try to uniformize and to set up a single rule for this market. But what we believe is that it's important that the information flows from one part to another. It's because of that that we are very, very much interested on setting up the necessary platforms at cross-European level that will have then open APIs where whatever company, being a hub or being the TSO or being different DSOs in function of the different models that the member states have, but that they can plug on this European structure or platform in order to exchange data in between themselves. That is the thinking that we have in this moment in time. It's because of that that we went even a bit further, saying that probably it's not enough just to have open APIs, but it should be a debate on having a minimum structure of the data, a minimum common data format based on what the different more advanced member states have already developed. And here's where we are in this moment.
That sounds very interesting. I mean, is this also a step towards helping the prosumer to be fully engaged? So if someone in Spain wants to sell solar and someone in the Nordics wants to buy it, it will allow that kind of transaction?
You are fully right. That's the idea. We know very well that if we are able to manage this buying and selling, let's say, in between the different member states, will reduce drastically the imports on energy that we are doing today. And we know that today we are paying a big fortune, is enormous fortune that we are paying each day for buying energy outside Europe. So the first thing, it seems that is logical thinking, is to manage better the energy between ourselves. If there is lots of energy because it's sun in the south but is missing energy in the north, it seems that it's more logical that we transfer this energy to the north than that we buy this energy from a third external country. But for that the grid needs huge updates. And okay, it's a work in progress, it's not something that we will see from today to tomorrow. But if everybody has the same idea in mind, in a few years we will see the difference. And I myself was involved in a project that was just a test in between Austria, Slovenia and Italy. And there the market was working in near real time in between the three countries, and the simulation showed incredible benefits.
From your perspective, I mean, you obviously have a good perspective from looking from the outside into the industry. What's your perception of how well data is being collected and processed and value is being drawn from it?
I must say that I'm following this process now a few years, and each year was more or less the same. And this year, here in the Utility Week, I have seen a real leap forward on this matter. I think the utilities are not anymore thinking on whether it is important to use data or not. I think everybody now is convinced. Everybody has done the necessary test, and everybody is starting to use data. What is clear, I will say that the main European utilities are already using data for what is better managing their network assets. That is a fact. But then I have seen other utilities that are starting to invent new products and services based on data. For instance, I have seen this morning an amazing example. That is one utility that has set up what they call a virtual energy server. So you can subscribe, and it's like, to explain that easily, it's like in the banks. you can say, if I'm producing energy, I store this energy in a virtual place. It's not a physical battery, it's a virtual place. You store this energy, and then you can use this energy even if you are roaming with your electrical car and you are in another country. Even you can use this electricity if you are, I don't know, in your summer holidays house, because you have a virtual storage of energy. So you see that is new products that I never thought of that before. So I think this year I have seen a big progress in this area.
And kind of time scale on getting that energy uniformity or free data flow. What kind of time frame are we looking at?
The legislation will be in place very soon, I hope in 1 year time, something like that. But then it comes, okay, it will be the free data flow, but then it comes that the companies need to see what they do with this free data flow. And then it comes when they need to be creative and they need to invent the services, and that will take still, I don't know, a couple of years more maybe. But the free data flow, I expect that will be next year sometime.
And data security, does that fall under your remit?
Yeah. That is another big concern, is mainly cybersecurity. I have seen today the utilities that are very much advanced on that also. I have seen that there is a huge progress, and that the security is really a big issue. And we need to think that on cybersecurity, if you start connecting computers and if you start connecting your devices to the internet, I mean, the weakest link will be the entry point. So you cannot only secure the TSO infrastructure like it was before, now you have to have the full value chain that is secured. And here is where there is the big challenge that we have, because TSO's infrastructure is secure, that nobody does. But when you start having electrical vehicles, small fridges that are connected directly to the internet, here is where the challenge comes, because we need a solution that is not only robust but is scalable. And we are talking about millions and millions of devices. So that is really a challenge that we have ahead.
And perhaps we'll finish with, you mentioned your first remit is looking after the general data protection regulation. For those utilities that are struggling to meet the deadline, what would be your advice?
I think, and that is another thing that I have seen enormous progress today. I think the utilities were, in the past, were companies very close, and they were used, to develop everything by themselves, to not share any information and to work by their own. I think now the thing is changing. It has arrived a time where they know that they need to partnership with other companies, they know that they need to seek collaborations, and that is a good area to seek collaboration. There is many companies in Europe that know very well how to apply the General Data Protection Regulation, and is to find partnership with them and not try to read all the details of the law and struggling with your own lawyers there on a corner and finding a solution that at the end will not work. So I think the solution for that is partnering with others that are more advanced.
Good advice, and partnering is a word that we've been hearing a lot the last few days. Thank you very much for your insights and your comments.
Thank you.
You've been watching the Engerati studio. Thanks for joining us. You can watch plenty more Engerati videos on YouTube. Goodbye.